Thraxel's message traveled across subspace channels reserved for only the highest priority communications. Within moments, his monitoring station became the center of a rapidly escalating situation. Senior Counselor Vexal's holographic form materialized beside him, multifaceted eyes narrowing as they examined the sensor data. "You've verified these readings?" Vexal asked, mandibles clicking in the pattern that indicated extreme skepticism. "3 times, using independent arrays." Thraxel confirmed, bringing up additional holographic displays. "The gravitational displacement alone confirms these are constructed objects, not natural phenomena." Vexal moved closer to the main display, compound eyes reflecting the image of what appeared to be a sphere the size of a small moon, but with obvious artificial structures visible across its surface. "And you're certain these are of human origin?" The energy signatures match known human propulsion technology, just at a scale we never imagined possible. Thraxel adjusted the display to show another angle. "Their communication protocols are definitely human. We've intercepted standard identification beacons." The counselor's carapace shifted colors slightly, indicating profound disturbance. "The humans achieved spaceflight less than 2 centuries ago. Their first interstellar voyage was barely 50 cycles past. This level of engineering should be millennia beyond their capabilities." Thraxel hesitated before responding. "There's more, Counselor. Our deep space probes have identified not 1, but 7 such vessels. They appear to be traveling in formation." The color drain from Vexal's carapace was immediate. 7. Impossible. "The data is conclusive." Thraxel brought up a new holographic display, showing the relative positions of the massive ships. Based on their current trajectory, they'll enter the outer boundaries of Concord space within 15 standard cycles. "Have they detected our observation probes?" "Almost certainly, though they've made no attempt to conceal themselves or alter course." Vexal's secondary appendages twitched nervously. "A species that can build worlds that move through space would have little to fear from us." The monitoring station's communication array chimed with an incoming transmission. Thraxel checked the origin signature and froze. "Counselor, we're receiving a direct transmission from the lead vessel. They're requesting communication. They detected our probes and tracked the signal back to this station." Vexal's voice carried a harmonic that Thraxel had never heard from a superior before. "Fear. Shall I accept the transmission?" After a moment's hesitation, Vexal nodded. "We cannot appear hostile or fearful." "Accept it." The holographic display shifted, and both Concord officials found themselves facing the human female with dark skin and silver-streaked hair. She wore what appeared to be a simple uniform with minimal insignia. "Greetings from the Earth Exploration Fleet," she said in perfect galactic standard. "I'm Admiral Kamara Osei of the vessel *Earthseeker*. We've detected your observation drones and tracking signals. Since we'll be passing through your territory soon, we thought a proper introduction was in order." The casual nature of the communication, as if commanding a fleet of impossible ships, was an everyday occurrence, left both officials momentarily speechless. The human smiled. "Is this an inconvenient time? We can reschedule our approach if needed." Thraxel realized in that moment that everything the Concord thought they knew about the galaxy's power structure was about to change forever. Diplomat Zevra's shuttle passed through the atmospheric barrier, with only the slightest shimmer indicating they had transitioned from space to breathable air. Through the viewport, her delegation watched in stunned silence as the interior landscape of the Earthseeker stretched before them. Rolling green hills, lakes reflecting an artificial sky, and in the distance, the glittering skyline of a human city. "It's even more impressive in person," murmured Science Attaché Coldex, his sensory frills expanding to capture more data. "The scale is difficult to process." The shuttle came to rest on a landing pad surrounded by flowering plants arranged in geometric patterns. Captain Maya Rodriguez waited for them with a small welcoming party, all wearing casual uniforms that seemed impractically comfortable for space travel. "Welcome to *Earthseeker*, Maya said with a warm smile as the delegation disembarked. I hope the approach wasn't too turbulent. Our weather systems needed calibration this morning. We had some unexpected rain in the southern agricultural quadrant. Weather? Systems. Zevra couldn't keep the disbelief from her voice. You engineer weather within your vessel. Of course, Maya replied, gesturing toward the artificial sky. Our ecosystems require rainfall patterns, seasonal variations, even occasional storms. We found natural cycles work better than artificial irrigation for large-scale agriculture. The captain led them to an open-air transport that hovered slightly above the ground. As they boarded, Zevra noticed the vehicle had no visible propulsion system. This section of Earthseeker contains mostly North American biomes, Maya explained as they glided over landscapes that shifted from meadows to forests. We're heading toward Lakeside City, one of our 3 urban centers. 3 cities, within one vessel? Asked security liaison Drextor, his hand nervously close to the atmospheric analyzer at his belt. This is one of our smaller vessels, Maya said with a casual shrug. The Terran heritage carries 5 full urban centers, plus dozens of smaller settlements. Different cultural preservation focuses. The transport crested a hill, revealing a vast lake with a city nestled against its shores. Watercraft moved across the surface while flocks of birds, actual Earth avians, circled overhead. How many inhabitants reside within this structure? Zevra asked, struggling to find appropriate terminology. Earthseeker houses approximately 12 million permanent residents, plus about 3 million in our rotating specialist population. Coldex's data recorder clattered to the floor of the transport. 15 million individuals on a single vessel. We find it's the minimum viable population for maintaining cultural diversity and specialized knowledge bases, Maya explained, as if discussing something as mundane as cargo capacity. Our larger vessels support up to 30 million. The transport descended toward a public square in the heart of the city, where humans went about their daily lives, shopping at markets, dining at outdoor cafes, children playing in parks, all seemingly oblivious to the fact they were living inside a constructed world hurtling through space. Chief Engineer Aiko Tanaka met them at a sleek building overlooking the lake. Her workspace featured floor-to-ceiling windows with stunning views of the city and surrounding landscape. Most of our engineering is actually performed in specialized sectors, Aiko explained, activating a holographic display showing the vessel's internal structure. But I prefer working where I can see what we're protecting. Zevra stared at the complexity of the schematic, layer upon layer of systems, redundancies, innovations that her people had never conceived of. The most common question, Aiko continued with a knowing smile, is how we maintain structural integrity at this scale while in motion. Yes, Zevra managed, finding her diplomatic voice again. By all known physics, this should be impossible. Aiko's hands moved through the hologram, expanding a section that showed an intricate lattice of glowing energy patterns throughout the vessel's shell. The trick wasn't making it stronger, she said. It was making it more adaptive. Scientific advisor Anxvatu followed engineer Jamal Washington through a corridor that seemed to ripple with subdued energy. The walls themselves contained informational displays that shifted and changed as they passed. Anxvatu's sensory appendages twitched with overload. Too much data, too many contradictions to established science. This central hub coordinates over 300 separate engineering disciplines, Jamal explained as they entered a vast spherical chamber. Humans worked at stations arranged in concentric circles, with holographic projections filling the center of the room. Every system on Earthseeker is monitored from here. Impossible, Anxvatu muttered. The computational requirements alone would exceed conventional processing limits. Jamal finished with a smile. That was our first major hurdle. We couldn't build computers powerful enough using traditional architectures. He guided Anxvatu toward a section where several humans appeared to be arguing intensely over a holographic model of what looked like power distribution nodes. Instead of trying to create a single perfect system, Jamal continued, we developed interconnected networks that specialize in different types of problems. some biological, some quantum, some using principles we discovered while building the first prototypes. HFY's translator struggled with several terms. Biological computing. You mean your artificial intelligence systems? Jamal laughed. No AI could handle this complexity. We tried. They kept reaching logical paradoxes and shutting down. Then how? Human intuition, Jamal said simply. That's Ananya's team. They're designing a power distribution upgrade by combining 3 theoretical models that conventional analysis says are incompatible. Yet somehow they'll make it work. HFY watched the humans debate, their gestures becoming more animated. This seems chaotic and inefficient. It is, Jamal agreed cheerfully. And that's precisely why it works. The friction between competing ideas creates solutions no single approach could discover. They continued to a section where the floor became transparent, revealing massive energy conduits pulsing beneath their feet. Humans in specialized interface chairs monitored the flows, their hands dancing through holographic controls. Our power generation system uses a combination of artificial quantum singularities, stellar energy collection, and matter conversion, Jamal explained. Each vessel effectively contains its own miniature sun. HFY's primary heart skipped a beat. You've harnessed artificial singularities. The mathematical model suggests that's dangerous? Absolutely, Jamal nodded. Our first 3 prototypes were catastrophic failures. Vaporized entire research facilities. Yet you continued. Of course, we learned from each failure. HFY struggled to comprehend the casualness with which the human discussed disasters that would have ended research programs in any galactic civilization. Your species hasn't developed collective consciousness, HFY observed. By all established models of technological progression, you shouldn't have achieved this level of cooperation without evolutionary unity. Jamal led him to a viewing platform that overlooked an enormous engineering bay where humans worked on components the size of small buildings. We don't need to think with one mind, Jamal said, watching his colleagues with evident pride. We just need to communicate effectively across our differences. But the disagreements, the inefficiencies, are exactly what drive our innovation, Jamal finished. Look there, he pointed to where 2 teams were clearly having a heated disagreement over a massive component design. They'll spend hours arguing, testing competing prototypes, proving each other wrong. And tomorrow, they'll have a solution better than either originally proposed. HFY watched in fascination as the argument unfolded. You encourage conflict. Not conflict, Jamal corrected. Creative tension. The space between opposing ideas is where the most interesting solutions happen. For the first time in his distinguished scientific career, HFY faced a paradigm so fundamentally different from galactic understanding that he couldn't even formulate the right questions to ask. Cultural attaché Ellipsia followed Dr. Sophia Chen along a winding path through a dense rainforest. The humidity clung to her membranous skin, a sensation both uncomfortable and fascinating. Above them, the artificial sky simulated late afternoon, complete with scattered clouds and birds calling from the canopy. This entire section replicates the Amazon basin as it existed in the early 21st century, Sophia explained, pausing beside a massive tree whose roots twisted impressively above the forest floor, before the climate shifts altered it irrevocably on Earth. You recreated extinct ecosystems? Ellipsia asked, her translator struggling to find the right inflection for her amazement. Not just the plants and animals, but the complex relationships between them, Sophia confirmed. The soil microbiome alone took 15 years to properly cultivate. We have 36 major Earth ecosystems preserved across our fleet. They emerged from the forest into a clearing where a small settlement of wooden structures stood along a river. Humans in simple clothing worked at various tasks, weaving baskets, preparing food, teaching children songs in a language Ellipsia's translator identified as an ancient human dialect. These are the descendants of indigenous Amazonians, Sophia said softly. They maintain traditional knowledge and practices that date back thousands of years, knowledge that would have been lost forever without the ships. A group of children noticed their presence and ran over excitedly, pointing at Elyxia's translucent blue skin and four lobed eyes. Rather than showing fear, they seemed delighted by her alien appearance. "They wish to show you their riverboats," Sophia translated with a smile. "They're quite proud of them." Before Elyxia could formulate a diplomatic response, small hands were already guiding her toward the water, where narrow wooden vessels rested on the shore. The children demonstrated how they navigated the currents, explaining fishing techniques that had remained unchanged for centuries. "I don't understand," Elyxia said later as they departed, crossing a boundary into what appeared to be an entirely different climate zone. A temperate forest with maple trees displaying brilliant autumn colors. These cultural preservations require enormous resources, the inefficiency of maintaining such diversity instead of developing a unified society. "That's exactly what we were losing on Earth," Sophia replied. "As our world globalized, we gained technological efficiency but began losing the diversity of thought that comes from different cultural frameworks." She led Elyxia to a ridge overlooking a valley where the autumn forest gave way to a rolling meadow, and beyond that, the towering spires of a modern city. "Our greatest breakthroughs have always come from the intersection of different knowledge systems," Sophia continued. "Traditional ecological knowledge combined with modern biology. Ancient architectural principles informing new construction techniques." Elyxia watched as a group in the meadow performed what appeared to be a ceremonial dance, their movements creating patterns that seemed somehow mathematical in their precision. "Our quantum navigation system," Sophia said, following her gaze, "based on dance patterns developed by Polynesian navigators who crossed vast oceans using only the stars. No one thought ancient knowledge could inform faster than light travel until a physicist happened to witness a similar dance." As the sun began to set over the simulated landscape, Elyxia struggled with a profound realization. Her civilization had spent millennia pursuing uniformity as the path to advancement, eliminating cultural variations, standardizing thought processes, optimizing for efficiency. "We don't preserve these different ways of life out of sentimentality," Sophia said, seeming to read her thoughts. "We do it because our diversity is our greatest adaptive advantage. Each culture represents a unique solution to the fundamental problems of human existence." Elyxia watched the lights come on in the distant city as darkness fell, creating a constellation that mirrored the artificial stars appearing overhead. "You've turned your entire civilization into an experiment," she whispered. "Not an experiment," Sophia corrected gently. "A garden." Supreme Counselor Xalan's chambers fell into stunned silence as the holographic projections displayed the devastation. 3 galactic outposts, gone. The void-born entities had consumed everything, leaving nothing but empty space where thriving communities once existed. "Our most advanced defensive systems failed completely," Defense Minister Krefta reported, his voice hollow. "Energy weapons passed through them. Planetary shields collapse within minutes of contact. Physical barriers are absorbed." "What of evacuation efforts?" asked Representative Myla from the Aquatic Worlds Coalition, her fins trembling visibly. "We managed to evacuate 60% of the population from Outpost Zenith before it fell," Krefta answered. "The other stations had no warning." The emergency session had stretched into its 14th hour when First Contact Liaison Zevra, newly promoted after her successful diplomatic mission to the human vessels, cleared her throat. "The human representatives have sent their response to our request for assistance," she announced, activating a new holographic display. "They've agreed to help without conditions." A collective ripple of relief passed through the chamber, quickly tempered by wariness. "What do they propose?" Talon asked, leaning forward. "Sharing weapons technology. Offering sanctuary for evacuees." "Neither," Zever said, manipulating the display to show a tactical simulation. "They're repositioning their entire fleet of planetary vessels to form a defensive line between the Voidborn and the most populous systems in the Concord." The simulation showed the massive human ships forming a barrier in space, deliberately placing themselves in the path of the oncoming threat. "This is absurd," Krevta objected. "They would sacrifice their planetary vessels, their artificial worlds." Admiral Helena Okafor's hologram materialized in the center of the chamber, her dark eyes scanning the assembled representatives with calm intensity. "We're not planning to sacrifice anything," she stated firmly. "We believe we can withstand the Voidborn attacks long enough to study them and develop countermeasures." "Based on what evidence?" demanded Science Overseer Enkspatu, who had spent weeks studying the human engineering practices. "Based on our structural redundancies and adaptive defense systems," Helena replied. "Our vessels were designed to survive extreme conditions, including energetic anomalies similar to the Voidborn signatures. You would risk 15 million lives per vessel on a theory?" Counselor Xalan asked incredulously. Helena's expression remained composed, but her voice carried a steel edge. "First, we've already begun evacuating non-essential personnel to our core worlds. Second, the alternative is watching billions die while we debate. The Voidborn will reach the Trellis system in 5 days, Magellan in 8, and the Concord homeworlds in less than 20. The chamber erupted in overlapping voices until Talon raised all 4 hands for silence. "Why?" she asked simply. "Why would humans place themselves in such danger for species they barely know?" Helena's hologram flickered slightly as she considered the question. "When we began building our ships, it wasn't just to explore or to preserve our past," she said finally. "It was because we believed life, all life, deserves protection. Our vessels carry Earth's legacy, yes, but they also represent our commitment to ensuring a future where diversity thrives." She gestured to the tactical display where the human ships were already changing course. "We built our vessels to safeguard what matters most. Right now, that includes you." After Helena's hologram faded, the chamber remained silent for several long moments. Finally, ancient observer Pelthrin, whose species had been among the founders of the Concord 10,000 years earlier, spoke in a voice raspy with age. "In all our recorded history," he said slowly, "no species has ever volunteered to place themselves between danger and others without guarantee of compensation or alliance benefits." Counselor Xalan's scales shifted to the deep blue of profound thought. "Perhaps," she said, "that is why no species has ever built ships the size of planets before." Tactical Officer Verlox watched from the observation deck of the Concord battlecruiser Vigilant Dawn as the human vessels maneuvered into position. Despite their enormous size, the planetary ships moved with unexpected precision, adjusting their formation in response to the approaching Voidborn. "How are they coordinating so effectively?" he asked the human liaison officer stationed aboard his ship. Commander Samira Khan glanced up from her data terminal. "Quantum entanglement communications, instantaneous, impossible to intercept, and immune to the energy disruption fields the Voidborn generate." "But the decision-making speed," Verlox insisted. "Even with instant communication, the command chain for vessels of that size should create significant delays." Samira smiled. "We don't use traditional command hierarchies during crisis situations. Each ship functions as a semi-autonomous unit with pre-authorized response parameters." Before Verlox could question further, the sensor array pulsed with urgent data. The Voidborn vanguard had arrived, amorphous entities of shifting darkness that seemed to devour light itself. "New Horizon is engaging," Samira reported calmly as the foremost human vessel activated its defensive systems. Verlox watched in professional fascination as the planetary ship's surface bloomed with energy projections. Rather than the standard shield configurations used by Concord vessels, the human defenses manifested as intricate, overlapping patterns that constantly shifted and adapted. "Incredible," he murmured. "They're creating localized energy disruption fields that mirror the Voidborn's own properties." The observation deck fell silent as the entities swarmed toward New Horizon. The first contact was catastrophic. A section of the vessel's outer shell, an area roughly the size of a small continent, darkened as the Voidborn began consuming its energy. "They need to withdraw," Vrilnox exclaimed. "That's a critical breach." Samira remained focused on her terminal. Emergency protocols are already redirecting power and evacuating affected sectors. On the tactical display, Vrilnox could see something remarkable happening. Rather than attempting to repel the attack directly, the human vessel was channeling energy away from the affected area, essentially creating controlled sacrificial zones while reinforcing others. There, adapting in real time, he realized. "Watch the other ships," Samira suggested. The tactical display showed the remaining human vessels adjusting their defensive configurations based on data from New Horizon *, each one implementing slightly different patterns, testing variations, sharing results across the fleet instantaneously. "It's like watching a massive parallel processing experiment," Vrilnox observed, each ship trying different solutions simultaneously. When the Voidborn altered their attack pattern to target Terranova, the human vessel was ready with modified defenses. Though still damaged, the impact was significantly less devastating. "Their adaptation rate is unprecedented," Vrilnox noted, recording his observations for Concord Command. No centralized species could respond this quickly to novel threats. A massive energy surge caught his attention. One of the smaller Voidborn entities had broken through the human defensive line and was accelerating toward a civilian habitat station housing 3 million Concord refugees. Without hesitation, the human vessel Pacific Legacy broke formation, placing itself directly in the entity's path. The collision was violent. Nearly 1/5 of the ship's habitable area went dark instantly as the Voidborn lashed onto it. "They couldn't evacuate that section in time," Vrilnox whispered, horrified at the likely casualties. Samira's expression remained composed, though her eyes reflected momentary grief. The agricultural districts were fully evacuated, but 53 engineering crews chose to remain at their posts to maintain critical systems. "Chose," Vrilnox echoed in disbelief. "Volunteered," Samira clarified. "They understood the risks." As the battle continued, Vrilnox struggled to process what he was witnessing. It wasn't just the technological adaptation that astonished him, but something his tactical training had never prepared him for: the willingness of individuals to risk everything not just for their own species, but for others. "Your people fight as though you share a unified consciousness," he finally said, "yet each individual acts with complete autonomy." Samira looked up from her terminal, a slight smile crossing her face. "That's humanity's greatest paradox, Officer Vrilnox. We're strongest when we're free to choose collective action." Dr. Kwame Nkrumah's holographic presentation dominated the Concord Strategic Command Center. The physicist's eyes were rimmed with exhaustion, his gestures energetic despite his obvious fatigue. "The Voidborn aren't consuming energy in the conventional sense," he explained, manipulating a complex multidimensional model. "They're transferring it across dimensional boundaries. That's why conventional weapons are ineffective. The energy simply feeds them." Science Overseer Vatu studied the equations scrolling alongside the model. "These calculations suggest a dimensional anchoring theory that our scientists proposed centuries ago, but abandoned as theoretically impossible." "We thought the same," agreed Dr. Lakshmi Patel, who stood beside Kwame. Her prosthetic arm projected additional data streams into the display, until we observed the Voidborn's quantum signature directly. Strategic Commander Velthix leaned forward. "You've developed a weapon based on these observations." "Not exactly a weapon," Kwame corrected. "More of a trap. We've designed a system to invert the Voidborn's own dimensional transfer process." Lakshmi expanded part of the display to show a modified schematic of 3 human vessels. "By converting these ships into dimensional anchors, we can create a stable pocket universe, essentially a one-way door. Once the Voidborn enter, they can't return." "You would sacrifice 3 of your planetary vessels?" Velthix asked, mandibles clicking in surprise. "We prefer repurpose," Kwame said with a tired smile. The conversion process requires us to fundamentally alter their existing systems. The Concord representatives exchanged uneasy glances. The human proposal was simultaneously brilliant and disturbing. A technological leap accomplished in weeks that should have required generations of research. These vessels house millions of your people, reminded First Minister Xalan. The logistical challenges of evacuation alone are already underway, interrupted Representative Zhongwei, his calm voice contrasting with the urgency of the situation. Citizens from the designated vessels are being temporarily relocated to our remaining ships and to secure Concord worlds. Temporarily, echoed Angsubatu. Once the Voidborn threat is contained, we intend to build replacement vessels, Zhang explained as if discussing routine construction rather than creating new artificial worlds. That would take decades, Xalan observed. We estimate 7 years for the first replacement, 12 for all three, Zhang replied. We've already learned much from our first-generation designs. Commander Velthik studied the human representatives carefully. Your people agreed to this sacrifice without conflict, without coercion. There was vigorous debate, Zhang acknowledged. Different solutions were proposed, evaluated, and either incorporated or discarded. But once the evidence pointed to this as our best option, our citizens united behind the decision. And your primary concern now? Asked Texedlan. Zhang's expression softened. The cultural continuity of the displaced communities. Each vessel contains unique cultural heritage, art, traditions, ecological preserves that cannot be precisely replicated. We request Concord assistance in documenting and preserving these elements during transition. The command center fell silent as the implications settled over the gathered representatives. The humans had developed in weeks what Concord scientists couldn't conceptualize in centuries, yet their focus remained on preserving cultural artifacts and community bonds. You continue to confound our understanding, Anxvatu finally said. Your technological capabilities suggest you should have evolved beyond such sentimental attachments. Dr. Paddle smiled, absently adjusting her prosthetic arm. Those sentimental attachments are precisely what drive our innovation. We build ships the size of planets not because we can, but because we care about our history, our diversity, our future. She gestured to the schematics of the vessels to be sacrificed. And sometimes, caring means letting go of what you've built to protect what truly matters. Commander Velthik studied the human representatives with new understanding. Perhaps that is the most profound difference between our civilizations. We build to preserve what is. You build to become what might be. Ambassador Thraxel stood at the center of the great assembly, the curved walls of the chamber designed to carry his voice to every corner without amplification. Representatives from all 17 founding civilizations of the Galactic Concord were present, along with delegates from 34 associate members. For the first time in recorded history, the ceremonial viewing gallery had been opened to non-diplomatic observers, thousands of beings from across the galaxy who had journeyed to witness this unprecedented moment. We believed evolution followed a predictable path, Thraxel continued, his voice resonating through the chamber. That technological advancement required biological uniformity, that the elimination of conflict was prerequisite to greatness. He gestured toward the human delegation, where representatives from dozens of Earth cultures stood together in their diverse ceremonial attire. Humans showed us another way. They proved that disagreement could refine rather than hinder progress, that maintaining diversity accelerates adaptation rather than slowing it. Holographic displays throughout the chamber showed images from the final confrontation with the Voidborn. The 3 converted human vessels, *Earthkeeper**, *Dawn Sentinel**, and *Legacy of Terra**, positioned at precise coordinates, their massive forms pulsing with energy as they created the dimensional bridge that had trapped the threat permanently. They sacrificed vessels that took generations to build, Thraxel said, his voice softening. Not because they had to, but because they chose to. Not because they were ordered to, but because they agreed to, each individual exercising their autonomy to support a collective decision. On the main platform, Counselor Zalin rose from her ceremonial seat, signaling the transition to the formal recognition. The Concorde has existed for 12,000 standard cycles, she began, her multiple arms extending in the traditional gesture of welcome. In that time, we have encountered 817 spacefaring civilizations. None has challenged our understanding of what is possible as profoundly as humanity. She activated a control on her podium, and the chamber's central display revealed an astonishing image. Construction frameworks surrounding an object of impossible scale, dwarfing even the existing human planetary vessels. While we debated how to thank you, Talon continued, humans began building again, not just replacing what was lost, but creating something new. The Joint Human Galactic Repository designed to preserve the knowledge and culture of all our civilizations. The human delegation was led by Dr. Maya Rodriguez, now Admiral Rodriguez, who stepped forward to accept the formal recognition. We build large ships not because we think big, she said with a smile, but because we dream big. The vessel you see under construction isn't just human. It's designed with input from all Concorde species, incorporating technologies and cultural elements from every willing contributor. Junior observer Prilna approached Thraxel as the ceremony concluded, her data pad displaying new sensor readings. The construction project, she whispered urgently. Our latest calculations suggest it will be nearly twice the size of their largest previous vessel. The power requirements alone would drain a small star. Should we be concerned? Thraxel watched as humans mingled freely with beings from across the galaxy, engaging in animated conversations, exchanging ideas, forming connections that would have been unimaginable before first contact. No, he replied thoughtfully. I believe we should be inspired. He gazed at the construction image once more, seeing not just the physical structure, but the philosophical shift it represented. When we encountered humanity, we ask ourselves, how could they build planet-sized ships? Thraxel mused. Now I understand we asked the wrong question. What should we have asked? Prilna inquired. Not how they built such ships, but why. Thraxel's eyes followed a group of human children teaching Concorde younglings a game from Earth. They build not to demonstrate power or technical prowess, but to preserve, protect, and connect. As the assembly dispersed, plans were already being exchanged for collaborative projects, cultural exchanges, and joint scientific ventures, a new era of galactic cooperation sparked by a species that had taken a fundamentally different path to the stars. The humans have a saying, Thraxel told his young colleague. The journey matters more than the destination. Perhaps all along, they weren't building ships. What were they building then? Asked Prilna. Possibilities. Thraxel replied. Endless possibilities.